So for project 2, your first task and probably the biggest hurdle is getting set up with GitHub. And if you're new to GitHub, we encourage you to take our Intro to Git and GitHub course. It's really fun. I love that class. I think Caroline and Sarah did a really nice job.
I agree.
And it's been really helpful. I learned a lot, actually, from that class. They know a lot of tricks about GitHub and Git. But Git, yeah, you got to get your Git and GitHub account set up. And then you're going to fork the repo. We have a starting point for that resume. And so you're going to fork that, and that creates a repo of your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on your GitHub account online. Mm-hmm. And once you have that repo online on your GitHub account, you can clone it to your computer locally.
Yes.
So now you have your local clone, and you can work on the code locally, and then push your changes back.
So, version control, Durant, I'd like to ask you, why version control? What's the point?
Yeah, so version control, often if you want to be able to go back to an old version of something you did before, maybe you're trying different branches. You can try A and a B, and you can work on them individually, and you can switch back and forth between them. In the simplest case, where you even just have, just a single revision history, you can go back to a previous version. Let's say you like something that you did before, and you want to go back to that. You decided the new way, the test way isn't what you want.
Right.
Go back, and especially in the course, they also talk about where if there's a bug that was introduced, you want to go back and find it, figure out what that was. You can fix it, and you can still keep the whole history of everything you have and move forward from there.
Okay, so and how important is it for you to learn version control in the professional world once you're working with other people? Because it's good if you're there is an argument, and it's a fair argument that if you're just working on it by yourself, you could just copy old files into a folder and say, okay, this is my old version, and then I'm just going to copy everything into another folder. I have another version that I want to work on.
Right, and that's a good point, especially because when we're working with other people, version control will also track who made what changes. There's something funny called Git blame, where you can figure out who introduced what into the stream of edits. So it's really good when working with different people to be able to track all the different versions of whether it's code or even documents. So that you can go back. It's pretty much a requirement working in any kind of production environment with other people. And even by yourself, if you want to sort of have just a trail of breadcrumbs just to sort of go back and see what you did at what point, to basically rewind the clock, to go back in time to find older versions. There's the only other way to do it would be to name files, maybe version 1, version 2. So you have a very cluttered directory structure. These tools make it really easy to first create that trail so that you only see the current files in that directory. So it keeps everything neat and compact in your directory, and then also makes a way that you can share it with other people, like through GitHub.
Right. So that's interesting. Let's talk more about only saving what you need. In Git versus, because if you think about version control, you may be saying, well, let me just save the whole version, all the files one at a time. I'll archive this folder for yesterday, and then I'll copy all the files, and then I'll also then make my changes and copy all the files again. So what's the difference between what GitHub does and if you were to do everything manually?
Right. So one thing, especially now that you're mentioning multiple files, that's something else that's incredibly important. Imagine you had 2 different versions and the files had to be consistent with each other.
Right.
So you can save all these files together in one batch or all the files together in another batch. And you know that when you save them, if you save them to be consistent, you can switch back and forth between multiple files at the same time.
Right. So it kind of Git, it's one cool thing is Git, it doesn't necessarily save all the file, it saves the differences.
Yes. Right.
Right. So if you think about it, it's actually genius. It's very efficient. So you don't care about redundant lines of code. If you did not touch that line of code, Git doesn't care about it.
That's right. Yeah.
So only if you change certain lines of the code, Git will keep track of those changes.
Yeah.
Because it will assume that if you have a section of the code that you don't touch, it won't do anything with it. It will just assume that it will just be there forever.
Yeah. It's super smart that way. And then also you can view the differences between each version. So instead of looking at these, ginormous files, you can see like, oh, we just changed these lines versus those lines. Really helpful for trying to track down.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for giving us the overview of like why Git and GitHub is important in version control.
This particular tutorial is very helpful in just understanding the basics of Git, just the absolute high level of what the basic commands are and what you need to know just to get started off. The link is try.github.io. It'll automatically take you to the first level and the first challenge. And I spoke about this already. Now you can see it on my screen. You can see that there's it's got a terminal. It's got a virtual file system that you can use just to see how changes are being made. So when you start off, the first thing you do is you want to create a Git repo on your system. So that is done by using the git init command, which is the initialization command. Once you enter that on your terminal, you will see that there will be a .git folder that will be generated, and inside that you'll see a whole bunch of subfolders, branches, hooks, info objects. You won't have to make any changes to these. These are just used for the internal Git working, and so when you work with Git in the future, it'll be using all of these to make changes wherever needed. So once you've created your Git repo, the next step is to do Git status. So Git status can be used periodically throughout your working with Git just to see where your system is and what you're working with right now. So when you do Git status, you will see that it tells you that you're on the master branch and there's nothing to commit. So again, reiterating what I said previously, the branch that will be on your system, the local branch is called master, and your remote branch will be called origin. So these are the default names. So if you go ahead and add the octocat.txt file, as you can see, or in the virtual file system, if you add that into your Git folder and you do a Git status again, it'll tell you that there's a new folder. I mean, there's a new file, and that it's an untracked file. So when a file is untracked, what Git is basically telling you to do is it needs you to commit that file. But before you do that, it's always good practice to stage it. Staging of a file is essentially just a medium where you're confirming that the file that you want to add into your Git repo is the correct file and it has the right changes. So to do that, we do git add the name of the file, and that will give you a comment saying that the file is now in the staging area. Again, you do a git status just to ensure that we're on the right track. Yes, so it tells us that the Git file that was added now needs to be committed. So once the file has been staged by using git add, you do a git commit. So as you can see, the workflow goes from git init, then you git add, and then you git commit again. So you commit this file, and you see that it's been added. So this is the basic steps that you need to follow to ensure that the file that you're working with gets added onto the staging area and then gets committed into your particular Git repo. And then it's the same process that goes over and over again. So in the virtual file system, you will see that if you add more files, if you want to stage all these files at the same time, you can do a git git star git add. Star is a wildcard that says that any files that have the .txt extension can be added. So I do that, and that will ensure that all the files that you've added into your Git folder are now in the staging area. And then you can do the exact same thing. You can commit them to ensure that they go from the staging area into your Git repo. And there you go. So far we've seen git init, git status, git add, and git commit. After this, there's another command called git log. A git log is it's essentially, if you want to see more information for each commit, you can use git log. You can see where new files were added, or where files were deleted, or all of the basic metadata information. So if I do a git log, you will see that every commit has a particular code associated with it, and it tells you who the author was, what date it was, and what changes were made to each file. So I was just giving you a quick brush through of this particular tutorial. You can go ahead and use this. It's not going to take you more than, say, 20 minutes to actually go through this entire tutorial. It explains how to work with remote repos, how to do a basic Git branch, how to do a basic Git merge.
Let's just talk about further into Git and GitHub. Can you? Because I've also noticed some people are a little confused between Git and GitHub.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's just talk about that, because that may clarify some questions that I've noticed on Piazza. Like, how about you too? Like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the difference between Git and GitHub? And do you need one or the other? Can you use one without? Yeah. What's the typical workflow if you're versioning things?
Right. So the relationship is that Git is software that anyone can use, anyone can download. It's open source, and you can host it from any particular website that you want. GitHub is a particular company, and their business model is to host, right? And to to make some extra tools to make it easier for using Git. You could do everything on the command line, but with GitHub, they just have a really nice interface for hosting your projects and for downloading repositories, that sort of thing.
Right. So then, to Duran's point, just want to drive this home. GitHub is just an online server where you can just host your code, share your code, and collaborate. Git is actually the system itself, the actual command line system that you will learn in our Udacity course. So just to drive home the relationship, how often developers write is they actually develop locally on their machine. They use Git commands to commit, save their versions. Once they want to share their code. Once their code is done, they actually write a command called git push. Right? They'll push this code to GitHub, and from GitHub you could then share your code, and then GitHub will have supporting functions to be able to help you collaborate with people. So once you've shared it, people could then download your code onto their own local machine, and then they'll work on it. And if they say, okay, I have this great function addition to your code, I'm gonna upload it to my GitHub, and then I'm gonna submit what we call a pull request, where we just merge and say, okay, I think this is a really good feature. We should add it to the main master, the main code. That's how people work in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And on Git and GitHub.
And even your GitHub repositories, I've heard people say that it's could almost be a substitute for a resume or a CV. Like, you'll just give someone your GitHub repository and say, these are all my projects. So look at all my projects, and the projects speak for themselves. They'll look at your code. They could ask you questions about them.
Yeah, they'll ask you questions, and they'll also, if you collaborate online, if you collaborate with open source projects or other projects, they'll be able to see how you work with other people online and how you collaborate with other developers, and that's a very a crucial skill that they'll be looking at. So, we highly encourage you to start your GitHub account and start using Git and start being comfortable with it, because it will only help you.
If you don't use Git, you forget. Yeah. You forget what does this command do, or I'm thinking, okay, I want to merge this branch, but I want to delete this past commit before I want to merge it. How do I do it?
Yeah, I think it is a complicated system, but Sarah and Caroline do a great job of clarifying it and showing you some real world use cases for it. So definitely also work your way through that Udacity course. It might be a struggle because if it's new material, it'll be hard to get through, but it should certainly help, we hope.
Awesome little page that we found. Someone just programmed an interactive practice tool, like a little tool to practice with Git. And let's just look at I don't know, a Git commit.
Git commit, let's do it. Okay, so I click Git commit, and here's a little diagram, and there's master and head, and if I just Git commit, And git commit again. You can see the diagram updating and master and head move along with the head. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it gives you a visual representation of actually what's going on with your versions. Because just think of every circle as a version of your whole entire project.
Yeah.
So every circle is a commit, aka it's just a version that you saved. It's a snapshot of the past, basically. And this basically, you can think about Git as a time machine capsule. You can launch all these commands to manage this time machine. So basically, if everyone watches Doctor Who, it's kind of like your TARDIS. So everyone's TARDIS here in the software development world. And the GitHub is the ability to see everyone else's TARDIS, and you get to access their version control, their commits, and their code history.
Yeah, so play around with this. As you're learning the commands, as you're going through the course, just come back to here, this webpage, and it will actually dynamically build this diagram for you. So cool. Mark sent that to just the rest of us today. Thanks, Mark.